Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on Reaching Elusive Gen Z and Millennial Talent, How to Be More Authentic in Your Employer Brand. Monster is very pleased to have three subject matter experts with us today who will be going through top information on reaching this top target audience for us. According to Monster's 2022 Future of Work survey, 24% of candidates are skeptical of promises that companies are making about job expectations, benefits, perks, and even culture, with actually Gen Z and millennials being the biggest doubters. We're going to get into the stats and more in today's discussion. Attracting these candidates can be it can be more about communicating your employer brand, and it's about delivering your message in an authentic way that reaches these candidates, even the most elusive one, throughout their entire career journey. In this next 30-minute webinar, you'll learn the reasons why Gen Z and millennials select a company, why they choose to leave, and tips for crafting an employer brand that speaks directly to the newest workforce. With that, I will hand it over to Alan, Paul, and Dustin to go through the information.
Great. Thank you, Meg. And thanks to everyone joining us today. We really appreciate your time. And as she said, myself, along with my esteemed colleagues, we look forward to sharing a lot of great stats and insights around, the top reasons why Gen Zs and millennials, are selecting their next company to work for and why they leave and things of that nature. So it's critically important, and we look forward to this time with you folks today. So thank you for joining us. I think first we should level set a little bit and talk about what age group are we speaking to here, right? When we're talking about our millennials and our Gen Zs, because the millennials are still frequently referenced as those pesky teenagers. But frankly, the oldest of that generation has just recently turned, 41 this year alone. So the emerging workforce that we want to really hone in and focus on is called that Generation Z, or the Gen Z. They're the folks that were born after 1997, the oldest now being 25. I have one of those myself. And the end date year, if you will, that actually hasn't even been identified yet for this group. But it is important to realize and know that there's already 61 million of these job seekers poised to enter and or disrupt the workforce right now. So it's critically important to align your recruitment and this is important, and your retention efforts around this growing workforce, around their everyday behaviors, their expectations, etc. And we aim to shed some light on why and how to do that on today's webinar. So as Megan mentioned at the beginning, our Future of Work survey notes that, in total, basically 24% of candidates are skeptical of the promises companies are making about the job and the benefits and the culture and whatnot. So, this is why I think it's really, really important that the message that is put forth early on in the talent attraction or recruitment, as I mentioned earlier, but also in retention. Your messaging, your employer value proposition, your why, why I should come and work for your organization versus your competitor down the street, that doesn't start and it doesn't end with that recruiting effort, that initial engagement, and it really must continue through the hire, through the onboarding of that individual or those team members, and along the entire life cycle of those folks. And it must match and deliver against that messaging that you put forth from the start. It must be authentic. And that is why, you can see here, especially with this group, the 18 to 24s, the 25 to 34s, they are the most skeptical. And as I mentioned, in terms of behavior and expectations, we know what that's like today with those folks, right? It's the instant gratification. It's everything I can do on my phone. And so it's very important that everything is transparent, is authentic, and is at their fingertips and ready for them to engage with. That's their behavior. That's what they've grown up with, and that's now how we have to engage with those folks. And so if you think about that authenticity and then transparency and how important that is, you might ask yourself, why with this group? Really, why with anyone in the market today? And this is something we're all hearing now. This is the buzzword and the buzz terms of ghosting, and there's some pretty cool stats here that we're sharing. But it's all because this generation is really known for ghosting. And why is that? Through some different surveys, through surveys Monster's done, other surveys you may have seen, the Gen Z candidates said that the number one reason that they ghosted a company was the recruiter or the hiring manager was rude, or they felt that they were lied to about the position. Now, I think lied is a pretty strong word, but I understand what their meaning is here. And I'm not pointing any fingers. Many joining us today might argue that they were never rude or lied to, yet you guys still get ghosted, and we get that. In fact, our research found that 70% of recruiters are still willing to consider candidates who ghosted them. So I think that's pretty important, especially in today's market. But I think the disconnect here, perhaps the disconnect between lying and the company not being maybe authentic in what they say versus what they do is the message that we want to get across to folks today around your brand, around your messaging, and why it's so important with this particular workforce, the 61 million strong workforce that's entering. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my esteemed colleague Alan to continue on with some more great information for you folks.
Thanks, Bob. So one of the things that we're talking about when we look at these different types of genuine authenticity is the promises that we create, right? So a great example of this is the tech companies. A lot of tech companies, Twitter, Netflix, LinkedIn, they all boast high unlimited PTO. And that sounds great. And even Goldman Sachs is saying, we have unlimited PTO, but they're so known for 100-hour work weeks. So when you think of that, and when you're hearing this kind of information online, and then you get back to other people in your social media profiles or your networks of people, and they hear these disconnects, that's where they wonder, what is the real genuine story here? Is there anything to corroborate this? And where are those types of perks? So when they hear that type of contradiction, that's what starts to get them, their minds aflutter, and they start to understand that. Even going so far as one of our clients had mentioned the other day that it was in the interview process, and the company had said, we have unlimited PTO. Great. And so the candidate said, that's perfect. Actually, I'd love to take every Friday off for my PTO. They said, whoa, we're not a 4-day work week here. But we do offer unlimited PTO. So we think of that dichotomy, and we think of how contradicting that is. We understand, what, if you're going to say something having an unlimited PTO, they have to be open to hearing that. They have to be open to discussing that, and it can't be slapped away as soon as it's mentioned. So that's really where that authenticity comes, and really to make sure that what you're saying is really what's reflected, and that's adopted across the entire board. The other stuff that I thought was quite interesting was 50% of candidates say they wouldn't work for a company with a bad reputation, even for a pay increase. Now, that's a pretty bold statement, because we know right now that really goes down to your reputation. How is that more impactful? And the reason why it is because that whole perception or that whole culture of what they're working for sets the job expectation. It sets how they're going to connect with them from their own cultures and their values. And really, right now, with so many different jobs available, they really want to stand proud for who they're working for. So if there's any types of discrepancies in their reputation, or if there is any buzz about that hasn't been addressed, that's not someone they're going to look to right away. And I think that's really the big difference on that. I actually had an example of a major brewery in Canada, and we were working with them on their whole reputation and their employee value proposition. And it was so interesting because we were down to the president, and they're looking to make sure that the foam on their banners of recruitment was the exact right height. And I kind of chuckled to myself, like, wow, what's the matter? And the president said, no, it actually matters to me. That's, what we do here is we brew beer, and we take pride in our beer. So even just a small detail like that sort of resonates over for their reputation. And immediately when I think of that, I think of how every role in this organization is going to be proud to stand tall to what they do to further the overall goal. I think those are really big things to keep in mind when we're presenting that and how much impact that reputation has, both internally as well as external. The other thing I think that's really important is when we start to talk about employer branding, why is it that important? Well, right now, 75% of job seekers are considering an employer's brand even before they apply for a job. So no matter what jobs are available, they're starting to look and review what type of company is this? What is their stance? What is their culture? Because if they don't feel that that has a resonation with them, they're not even going to start applying. So not even let alone the fact of trying to get that conversion from someone interested over to an apply. Let's say they're not even going to look at you if they can't find your employer brand. So one thing that's really important to keep in mind is that number one obstacle for candidates right now is to understand what it's like to work at an organization. So if there's nothing out that on social media, on your career site, that's something that people are going to really identify and be turned off right away. I think the other thing to keep in mind on this is that candidates really trust company employees, right? We have social networks, we have a vast network of people. They want to hear directly from someone working there what it's like and what that reputation is. And they're going to take that and validate that with your employer brand. So again, those two things have to match up and they have to align. The employee story versus what's displayed, it has to be genuine, it has to match up. And that's a really good example because if we turn that around, you have brand ambassadors working for your company that are all there. So you just have to tap into them and make sure that messaging is the same. And I think that'll really resonate with other job seekers. And then the final thing that we just wanted to touch about is employer branding is sort of a big buzzword right now. So we want to just set the expectations and take a step back and say, what does employer branding mean? Or what does reputation mean overall? And it's not just a recruitment logo or a tagline. It's much more than that. It's your reputation, right? So it's your reputation as an employer, not as a corporate entity. It's what you are to work for. So that's something to keep in mind because in simple terms, it's really what not just the employees see, but also externally as candidates see. What are they really thinking of you? That's your employer brand. And there's all different types of combination of interactions, of touch points that are really going to paint that overall story. But in essence, that's really it. So every time someone connects with it, if it's online, if it's mobile, if it's on an interview, all of those different key points are going to help build out that employer brand. And I think that's really what you try to manage and trying to ensure that that goal is set up for overall. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Dustin to continue on that discussion.
And thanks, Alan. And employer branding makes a big difference when it comes to attracting new workforce. As you can see, like 70% of Generation Z workers say that they want to work for a company whose values align with their own. But what does this audience actually value? I looked into a few studies and I found that 57% of Generation Z and 51% of millennials leave within 2 years when they're not satisfied with a company's social impact. So that's saying something about what they're really valuing and what the company's values do and how they align with their own personal values. Now, with that, you also have 52% of Generation Z and millennials leaving within 2 years when they're not satisfied with the company's progression in creating diverse and inclusive environments as well. So as you can see, like what's really valued to this generation is really what's happening in the world today and how they see that affecting them and when they're in the workplace. And then, of course, 56 and 48% of Generation Z and millennials leave within 2 years as well when they're not committed, when the company's not commitment to sustainability. So if they feel that what they have in that company is not sustainable, if the work is not sustainable, if their work-life balance is not sustainable, they're leaving as soon as they get in there. So these are some of the things that we address with employer brand and values and with authentic messaging as well. So, that leaves us like, what else are these job seekers looking for? So what they're looking for and what the potential employees want, according to Randstad's 2022 employer branding survey, we rank most important criteria for candidates looking for the next employer. While it's expected to see salary and work-life balance topping the list, obviously, its very good reputation came in above company being financially healthy or even offering quality products and services. So here's a line between employer brand and company's brand. A company might be a poor consumer brand, but by offering inferior products to a competitor, but the employer brand can still demonstrate that they have a better place to work than that of the same competitor. So these are just some of the different things that, you're looking at what the employees want, in the USA versus North America. So some pretty good stats here, some pretty good percentages. So while at 39% of diversity inclusion ranked lower than we expected for candidate criteria, that doesn't mean it's not a priority for companies. In fact, 74% of companies plan to incorporate diversity inclusion criteria component in the employer branding strategy this year, which kind of goes back to the, why millennials are leaving within 2 years. They're not feeling the companies are taking enough steps to do that. So however, this needs to be a little more simplified in adding diverse imagery to your career site. Diversity inclusion needs to be more than just checking a box. Savvy candidates will see right through your efforts. So we want to make sure that we're not just doing smoke and mirrors, but what we're doing is very authentic. So this kind of also leads into what veterans are looking for. When you talk about Generation Z and millennials, they make up that age group of 18 to 41. Some of these candidates you are seeking are the veterans or retired veterans, at the longer end of that age group, looking to step into civilian life. So authenticity of who you are, very veteran specific recruitment programs, offering special offerings, anything. If you have veteran recruiters, do you understand what veterans need and what they're looking for within that same generation and Z and millennial group that you're looking for? Veterans are trainable, they're leaders, they're selfless, they take constructive criticism, they're very diverse. They've worked for DoD and they work for the most diverse workforce. So they're not going to have any issues working for a female or working for a diverse person that's in a leadership position. They know a leader is a leader and they're going to work for the person above them. So these are some of the things that you want to think about when you're talking about authenticity, brand, and diversity. So according to Randstad Employer Branding Research Report, employer brand is good for business. Companies with strong employer brand have 10% lower payroll costs. They see a 28% lower staff turnover and 46% lower cost for index hire. So as you can see, just by having a good brand and being authentic of who you are, you can also help reduce costs overall. And lower staff turnover means less roles to fill. So when it comes to your employer brand with Generation Z millennials, it's an infinite circle once you define your story. You'll share your story with social media and other platforms. Once your story is written, published, and where you need to turn up the volume. Be loud and proud, push that employer brand message through multiple media channels, campaigns, drive these candidates through a nice branded landing page, career site with content to help convince them of who you are, and give them the easy way to convert them into an active candidate into your database. So as long as we stay within this circle, we'll always stay inside our employer brand, we'll be authentic, and we'll be able to help kind of convince, convert, and manage the talent as they're coming through and speak to who we are with our employer brand strategy and our employer branding messaging. So I think at this time, I'll turn it back over to you, Meg, for Q&A and anything else.
Yes, thank you so much. We really appreciate this. There was a lot of great information here. We received a few questions as to whether or not we'd be sending out the presentation tomorrow. We will, along with a copy of this webinar. We also received a lot of questions in advance, so we'd like to tackle those first before we address live Q&A, although there are some Q&A that we have already answered during the presentation. I've also included some links in the Q&A to sources specifically for the skepticism, which came from Monster's 2022 Future of Work study, as well as the ghosting stats, which came from Monster's 2022 Gen Z survey. So I have the links to the ebooks in both of those. So with that, let's go into some of the questions we received. First one that I'm going to hand over to the group here. Do you find that Gen Z candidates are looking specifically for remote positions?
I can take that one on. From the previous survey of working arrangements and attitudes, only 24% of Gen Zs are actually looking for remote work. And that's actually the lowest demographic of all the other age groups of 30 to 39, 40 to 49, and 50 to 54. So that's not really the major driver for Gen Z. For other age groups it is, but not for them.
Perfect, thank you. Are Gen Z candidates using LinkedIn? Who wants to take that one?
Yeah, no, we touched a little bit about. I mean, let's move LinkedIn into the social channels and social media, right? I think it's something that they are starting to use. It's interesting. As I mentioned, I have a son, 25. He's in the workforce right now. I have two, a couple of years younger than him as well, all in the workforce. He is on LinkedIn. He's all over TikTok and the other social media pieces. I think It depends on the role a little bit, right? As well. So I think some of the white collar positions, companies can, anticipate that they're going to be getting some traction and some engagement from Gen Zers on LinkedIn, and that's why it's important to, as we talked about, the messaging that you put forth. It's an omni-channel approach. So whatever you're going to share about your employer brand, your employer value proposition within your corporate site on your careers page is something that needs to carry over to everything that you do. So all of the social media channels that you might use, including LinkedIn, all of the messaging that goes out, in your engagement efforts, and then following up on your engagement, as I mentioned, through onboarding and everything. So I do believe that they are using it, and so you really need to be prepared to have the proper transparency and authenticity that we're talking about today as part of that on that particular channel as well.
Right, Paul, I'm going to stick with you for a second because you did mention TikTok. We received a question specific to it we think is very interesting. I know. How does recruitment marketing look on TikTok?
I don't use TikTok. It's it's the one that I just haven't started to play with yet. Although my kids will, send me all the fun stuff. So I don't know if anyone else of my esteemed colleagues here want to mention that, jump into it.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, Meg. And I do have kids on TikTok. So, but in Monster's 2022 Generation Z survey revealed that 46% of college grads go to YouTube and TikTok just for advice, but 30% of the non-college grads go there for actual job search, which I've seen some of my kids do it on their own here in college. But if you're going to be on TikTok, you got to make sure you know your audience. Well, you should be authentic on all channels, like on LinkedIn, like you said, Paul. But you might want to share an article on diversity progress, leadership levels on TikTok. Might be younger people talking about perks of hybrid work environments. They're growing professionally faster, so more fast-paced, more face-to-face interactions. But both should be true about your company, but different elements of your employer brand geared towards the appropriate target audience. It's kind of a long-winded answer, but that's what I would feel like. TikTok is definitely going to be a place that's up and coming, but definitely going to be authentic because it's going to be face-to-face. They're going to be able to put a name to a face very easily within the company.
Dustin, I think that's a really good point, especially as, there are so many people doing remote and hybrid work. Actually now, 45% as of July 2022, 45% were either of working Americans were either fully remote or in a hybrid situation. This is a great opportunity as a way to show off your employer brand and your company culture, especially to Gen Z who's looking to be more in the office or even part-time in the office or part-time at home. A really great opportunity to demonstrate that. But to your point, you have to know your audience and what you're going to share there. Sticking with Gen Z, how important are things like tuition reimbursement benefits when Gen Z candidates are evaluating job offers from specific employers?
Yeah, so
do you want to take that, Alan?
Yeah, I can do that again. I think this is a pretty specific thing targeted to those people for tuition and reimbursement. But really what we can say is the vast research that we've done is that benefits are not typically what they're looking for from a specific company. They're really focused in on the salary right now. When we get into benefits, it does deviate between grad and non-grad to see what they're looking for. But I don't think at this granular level that that's something that they're expecting.
I might stick with you for a minute here. We're already talking about benefits. Do benefits still matter to these generations, these younger generations, or is the dollar amount just really the only thing that people are looking at?
So benefits definitely still matter, but I think they are starting to look more towards that salary range. I think that salary range is really something that's going to help them understand what opportunities are available, how their lifestyle is going to adapt. When we do go down to the further benefits, I think there is that deviation between grad and non-grad. I think the non-grads are really looking for that healthcare sort of benefits above everything else, but the non-grads have a little bit of a different needs, or grads have a little bit of a different needs for that. They're looking more for a flexible type of solution and schedule.
That's great. And the link that I provided in one of the Q&As to the ebook, our Gen Z ebook, you're going to get that data and more. So feel free to click into that and definitely get that information. Let's see. Well, so many questions. All right. What expectations do Gen Z and millennials have for a recruiting timeline?
Well, I think I mentioned that a little bit early on, right? Their behavior and their expectations. This is the world that they've grown up in, instant gratification. So, yeah, they are looking for a quick turnaround, quick messaging, quick engagement. So, I I would say it's important that you folks, keep that in consideration and engage and re-engage very quickly. And that's, again, that can be part of the ghosting aspect if they feel like if they haven't heard from any folks, heard back
Right.
from them.
I think outlining all the steps within your interview process and really letting them know what to expect can really help, transition from getting ghosted to like, hey, I'm not willing to do all that for this job.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think this is also a generation that has a shorter attention span. They even gravitate more towards video than even reading text, even if it's something short. So really over communicating each step within the process along the way, I think will help manage their expectations. So even if you
Mhm.
do have a longer recruitment timeline, and that's just something that your company has employed and it's a standard process, if you can at least provide them individual checkpoints along the way and manage those expectations, I think it will go a long way in terms of improving your ghosting numbers there. We have two kind of similar questions here, so I'm going to couple them together. Why are live communication skills declining with this generation? And another kind of similar question here is, what are the best ways to reach this audience? Text, email, calling, etc.
I think that right now, I wouldn't say the communication skills are declining, but I don't think that they're as practiced as before because everyone is virtual. Even today, right? We're all virtual right now, so we all have to adapt to that. And there is definitely some type of social awkwardness to being all virtual. We have different cues. We don't really see each other. We can't feel that same pulse. So I think that while it's different, I don't think they're declining. It's just we have to adjust to them because of that sort of previous sort of established role that we've had. Now, when we go to what different types of communication channels we're on, let's be honest, we have to go to where they are, right? If people are comfortable, on text messaging, then we should continue text messaging. If we should go on the different platforms, that's where they're going to be because that's where they want to resonate to. Most people are looking for emails to communicate, but text messages are still really strong. And I think video chatting is getting a little bit less, but they're starting to turn up. But still, if you have that direct communication with your candidates, you'll be able to really recognize how quickly they respond and what they're looking for and just continue on that vein because that's where they're most comfortable.
Wonderful. Great. Okay. What were the percentages of Gen Z and millennials who want remote work again? I can actually answer that. I have it in front of me. We are looking at 24% of 20 to 29-year-olds who want full-time remote work. Let's see some questions. What are some of the initiatives Monster has started in response to this information?
Well, I think one of the things that we've worked on a lot with other clients is really to delve in and understand how branding is working like we're showing today, and just try to find those different tools to understand and evaluate that. I think a lot of companies that are coming to us right now don't understand sort of what is out there on their digital footprint. And by understanding that and working together to that, they can now build strategies around it.
Great. We have two, again, similar questions. One is around the average tenure of full-time roles for Gen Z. And then another similar one that's talking about whether or not these generations are interested in making long-term commitments to these companies.
I don't know that I've seen the average. I think we'd have to dig into that a little bit, at least on for the Gen Z.
We don't have averages because it varies by industry, it varies by level, all of that. But we can say that they are looking for a commitment. Again, a great stat from our 2022 Gen Z survey, 81% of college grads and 65% of non-grads actually prefer full-time work over gig work. They're also additionally interested in learning about career advancement expectations, even during the interview process. So they're definitely interested in looking for a longer term commitment. How would you explain the generational change to our clients? That's interesting.
I'd like to expand a little bit more on that. Like what specifically do you mean for that generational change, I guess?
I don't have more information from this question here, but I think that there's something to be said about how we explain candidate expectations and adapting to our clients. I think there's something there, right? Where there's how we've recruited in the past is different than how we're recruiting today. I think the quality of candidates and the difficulty of getting them, especially with the rise of ghosting, is very difficult for our clients. It's something that Monster, I know, works on every single day, working on custom solutions to make sure that we are delivering candidates that are going to be best for those roles, whether or not, generations change and the way to reach them do as well. Alan, Paul, Dustin, anything to add there?
No, I think you summed that up really well, Meg. I think
Yeah.
it is just adjusting to what is out there. I think we're all hearing that there's challenges that we have to accommodate. There are, like we said, Generation Z are still candidates. There's still people that are looking, and they're in this different world of more virtual, more instant information to everything. So by understanding that and listening, I think we'll really have a different impact on our recruitment overall.
Yeah, and I think just infusing new technologies, right? Like as we talked about texting, for example, if they're on their phone and that's the way to reach them. So as more technologies come into it, the TikTok piece of it, I haven't adopted it, but we are working with it. It's important to make sure that that you're nimble and adjust to just how the generational change and where they are and what their behavior is to engage with those folks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for Alan, Paul, and Dustin for your time and your expertise. Thank you everyone who has joined us today. We really appreciate it. Again, tomorrow we'll be sending out a copy of this webinar recording as well as the slides here, so you can go back and peruse them at your leisure. If you have any questions or would like to talk more about how Monster can help with your custom solutions to actually talk to this audience and get that talent that you're looking for, please feel free to email salessoftwaresolutions@monster.com. Thank you so much, everyone, and we hope you have a wonderful day.